Thank you all so much. My name's John Rivers. I'm the agency fit consultant, new business development lead for Leap Group. I have the honor of moderating the panel today with some incredible people here. This is going to be really intimate, so I mean, we can talk, but if the moment really jumps at you, feel free to flag us down and hop in the conversation. I'll let everyone here introduce themselves and maybe why they wanted to be a part of the Future of Advertising panel. I'll start with my friend Elizabeth here.
Thank you, John. Hi, everybody. I'm Elizabeth Logsdon. I am here representing kind of what Candace talked about, different areas, kind of the paid media, performance media facet of our advertising world. And I have been in the advertising industry for 10 years. My background is both in the agency world, and then now I currently work on the brand side. Sometimes I say I went to the dark side. But it's been great, and we definitely have a blend of both in-house and still working with our wonderful agency partners. And so worked on a very wide breadth of different types of clients, from B2B, gaming. Right now I work on dental for Mortenson Dental Partners, and we have multiple brands across different markets in the US. And I am excited to be a part of, what'd you say, the future?
Future of Advertising.
Future of advertising, because even though I've worked only 10 years in the industry, it has changed so much, even in just the last probably 3 to 4, especially with, a global pandemic. So I'm excited to talk about kind of like some of the, assumptions people have, especially from a strategic, media placement standpoint, and then also kind of pairing that with how we all would work together in our different disciplines. So, Sam.
Whoa, that was really good. I'm Sam Plappert. I'm a creative at Doe-Anderson, specifically on the copy side. And yeah, I mean, we've worked together about the same amount of time. So I've been in the industry about 10 years. Before that, I was in academia. But I think the thing that excites me about the future, the reason I feel compelled to sort of be a part of this discussion, is that there's something afoot where I think the collaboration between strategy and media and creative is more important than it ever has been, because everyone has their own version of reality right now, and that creates such an interesting challenge for creatives out there. It's like, which version are we going to appeal to? Where are we going to be? How are we going to get there? And I think that is, it's probably always been a part of what we do, but I think it's even more tangible now than it ever has been.
My turn. Hello. Jason Clark. I started in a graphic arts vocational program in 1989 in high school. Before Max came around. So I've seen that change, and it's fucking wild how the world has changed since then. But I was a creative, I was a developer, I was a hothead, as we've discussed privately. Bought into Via Studio in 2003. Bought out my partner about 10 years after that, and then last year merged my company with a bigger company called eResources that's got multiple divisions: IT division, an offshore development division, lots and lots of things. So I wanted a way to not be bored selling the same thing over and over again. So this the last 2 years has been quite fun and interesting. So not only am I working on client work, I'm also, I've kind of changed my job from CEO to chief marketing officer for the whole company. So we've got internal products to sell now. We've got IT services, and obviously the Via Studio division that does branding and marketing. So, yeah, it's a lot.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. Give them a big hand, if you would. Thank you all for taking time out of your day to talk to us. Well, so this is about the future of advertising, and I'm sure many of you have great questions. Let's start by setting the stage. I'll go to Jason first, if that's all right. What is the current landscape, I guess, if you had to summarize it, of advertising?
There is no specific landscape. It is very tuned to, and we talked about a little bit of this in planning. What's your market? What's your audience? Where are they? that you mentioned this, like everybody's in their own bubbles. So what you're doing for one client can be completely different from what you're doing for another client. It is wild how diverse our our marketing programs are now. So that's kind of a non-answer, but it's all the things, right?
No, I think that just the chaos you're speaking to is probably relatable
Yes.
for a lot of people. Sam, how would you feel about that question? What's the landscape look like?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just, I was on a project recently where like the brief said that the audience was like 3 different verticals of people, and that actually ended up including everyone. It was like the audience is everyone all the time. But that's really not true. You know, I think it's more thinking about people in terms of psychographics versus demographics, and thinking about, think about your day. You wake up and this is probably revealing bad behavior on my part. You wake up and you like scroll social media for a minute.
Wordle.
And then
We do
you
the
go
Wordle.
about your road. Yeah. And you're just like, I think it's about being relevant in a really specific emotional state for a person. And that emotional state changes every single day, every single like second of the day. So I think that's the landscape, is like just finding that perfect bullseye target of, you know, timing, emotion, place, platform. You know, it's more about the person than the demographics, which I think is maybe not new for us as creatives or as advertising professionals, but new for clients. You know, we have to complicate things a little bit for them to really target messaging. So that's, I don't know, that's kind of where I see it right
That's
now.
a great answer. I mean, you're speaking to like teaching clients to not think of their buyers as just segments. They are unique individuals whose segment changes every day.
Yeah.
Interesting. So they're hard to reach, right? Elizabeth, how would you describe the media landscape?
Well, Sam's kind of stole my answer a little bit. Thank you. No, I would 100% agree. I think the thing that we always come back to is that we have to meet people where they're at. And it is, as you know, we talked about media specifically. If you look at even, 10, 5, and then beyond that time ago, has gone from your core mediums of like TV, radio, print, and then introducing digital and then social media. And now just in the last few years, TV alone and streaming has just completely fragmented that. And it's a matter of not only thinking about we can buy all of these different things, but it's like, okay, now the challenge is as a consumer, what are they subscribing to? And we're kind of like taken over by that. So it's really trying to figure out, what is the best blend of channels to reach these people.
I love it. What doesn't work? Do you feel like what channels, what strategies aren't working anymore? Would you say, Elizabeth?
Well, I think
I
it
know
is.
that's a broad
I would say
question.
it's very broad. Kind of, like what both Jason and Sam talked about is like finding out who you're trying to reach. But I think that there has been a big misconception that more like maybe traditional channels, like we're like, oh, we don't do print or we don't run as much like TV or radio. And the pendulum swung so far to digital. And what we've learned in different types of clients and then different brands, different types of audiences is, again, going back to meeting people where they're at, of that there is generally, depending obviously who you're trying to reach, what budget you have, but a full funnel play makes sense. You want to have multiple touch points. You may have, I use myself as an example of, do I pay to not have any ads on all of my streaming services? Maybe. So then how are you connecting with me in different mediums? Do I see outdoor boards? I watch broadcast television. Do I watch or listen to podcasts? That's completely taken over in the past few years. Social media. So really just making sure that you may have this big audience like Sam talked about, and it's like they are all interacting with different mediums in different ways at different times. So really to say, I don't think I'd rule anything out that's not working.
You know what? I was in a conversation this past weekend, of course, focus group of 1, but the group of people, which was probably about like 10 people, we were all talking about the New York Times as a publication. And like, I have the app, and every person in that group, except for me, subscribes to the printed Sunday delivery of New York Times. And it was, they had all kind of like, been like a targeted promotion, like they were like, yeah, I mean, they said it was only $1 more if I get it printed, delivered to my house. Yeah. And it was like, and also they're all very like cool people that I want to be like. So now I'm definitely going to try to also do that. It's like the literary
So
people.
there's like
yeah.
nostalgia has definitely been
But these were all people my age too, who like,
but it's like this, vinyl that's come back. It's like, do you have this tangible thing? We've all had overload of digital elements coming at you. So I think that
people want to like touch stuff now and feel it again and
feel like they're unplugged.
Yeah. I was like alarmed. And I actually did not know that they still printed the New York Times. I read it every day and I did not know that it was still printed. But now I do. And I'm a subscriber.
I just unsubscribed from the New York Times because I hate the news now. I don't want to kill myself. I'll stake a little bit of a claim here in what doesn't work, and it honestly frustrates the fire out of me when a client, like I'm going to say a small to mid-sized client, comes and wants like a campaign, and they think that's going to move the needle, right? Like give me that Don Draper moment where I'd release the ad copy and the creative, and oh my God, we're going to spend $3,000 to get that out into the world, right? Like there's so many more effective ways to get your marketing messages to your audience rather than that big overarching campaign. And we all love that kind of work, but the only time I see it is at the AdFed Awards, the American Advertising Federation of Louisville. Yes. We all encourage you to join if you're not a member.
We have a whole segment of the event dedicated to you, Jen, but we will keep with... Just kidding.
Yeah, well, like everybody wants that where's the beef moment.
Yeah.
And if you've got millions of dollars to spend on a Super Bowl ad, you can see the metrics and how much that moves hamburgers. But on a like more micro level with like a medium-sized company that wants a region, you don't have enough money to spend to move the needle on a big campaign like that. You just don't.
I agree.
Please. Oh, I was hoping you would disagree. Damn.
No, I have been in a situation recently where, as the creative getting briefed on it, you're like, ooh, yeah, I want to change your mind about that. Ooh, yeah, we're going to do that. And then they're like, and we're going to do some banner ads. And it's that same like sense of like they're asking for this big, rich idea that's just gonna like hit you and change your mind and your heart. But then like, how do you express that this big once?
Yeah. If you want that work, move to Portland, work for Nike. You might move the needle. It's not going to happen here.
Do you think some of that movement is simply because the agency landscape has changed? Most of us, I assume, in this room either work for a brand, and so we use agencies, or we work for an agency. Maybe starting with Jason, but I'm curious if everyone has an opinion. Like, is there a way that we've changed how we talk about ourselves, how we present ourselves? Are you seeing something that works and doesn't?
So we just had an internal debate, and again, like I would love some disagreement here, but we call ourselves a marketing company. Like via, we are a branding and marketing company. Advertising to me is a subset of marketing. So when we talk about advertising, that is specifically something that we are paying to place somewhere, digital, banner, whatever. So like I've never really thought that we're an ad agency, if that makes any sense. Like, and again, we were talking about this earlier. Words have meaning, right? Like what are our advertising capabilities? Specifically, where do we place paid creative? So, did that answer your question?
I think it does. It also shows you put a lot of thought into like how you want to present your services, how you want to talk about yourselves.
Well, the foundations don't change. And if you lay a good foundation with your brand strategy and knowing your audience, like the tactical stuff, like where to place this stuff becomes so much easier.
Makes sense. What about you, Sam?
I think I'm very lucky to work on clients who do ask for the campaigns and will often pay for them or, get us there enough to where we can do something. And so, my day-to-day or like a big belief that we're constantly bringing to the table is this idea of world building. So that might, Doe's been around a really long time. And I think that somehow they've managed to keep this like practice of promising like, we're going to build this brand world for you. And they do it. And there are people, they're much smarter and more talented than I who really can pull those levers and create that for clients. And I think that like that still gives me like a little bit of hope too. That like the advertising world as we know it, like there's still a little bit there. I think a really good example of this, and someone in the room could probably talk to it more than I can, is the Roto-Rooter work that we do. I mean, I think it's all social, right? Mostly. A lot of it. It's all done through social media, but it is its own brand world. And you should look up Roto-Rooter. Like it's actually worth following a plumber Instagram account because the content's really good and the branding's really good and it makes you feel like the message is always very clear. Leave it to the pros, like what other, like, how does this still exist that this like one promise is still in every execution that they do? And it is. So for me, I don't know. That's the world I'm living in. I don't know if I can really speak to like that broader landscape of this is no longer a thing because it is for me. I don't know.
No, that's
I actually
awesome.
don't even remember the question.
No, that's okay. You answered it so well.
Great.
You need to know. How would you react to that kind of question? I mean, obviously you have worked at a number of marketing companies, agencies, and are now on the brand side.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think I could maybe bring a little bit of a unique perspective to that just because, joking about going to the dark side or whatever. But we worked with, once upon a time, multiple agencies, and we have brought the majority of our advertising and marketing work, a lot of I like how you put that, Jason. We have that philosophy as well of marketing umbrella was already there. We brought the advertising piece in and it works to a point, but we still find a lot of value with agency partners for specific projects. If we have really big things that we need to build out, like this brand world, brand identity, like that's definitely work that you just don't get that. And I think my leader would back me up on this, of where you have a very dedicated creative team, especially that's in the weeds of these brands all the time. And it's kind of hard to come up out of that. Whereas with like an agency, I think that reason to believe is you still have, you have this thrown out to like 3 different creative directors and copywriters and get these amazing ideas. And, that still is something that we definitely value. Whereas, we could have the same from a media perspective where I'm like, I'm in this, can I bounce these other ideas off of you, or I may not have experience in certain markets or things like that. So I think it's definitely, we can complement each other.
Makes sense.
So.
Makes sense. I feel like you can't talk about the future of advertising, marketing services without talking about AI, which I'm biased because I'm bored of talking about it personally. I recognize it is in our future, whether we want it to be or not. Can I just do a poll? People that are like excited about AI. Okay, I'm in the minority in here. People that are not excited about AI. People who like just don't want to talk about it anymore. Like it's gonna happen. Kind of the camp I think I'm in.
We have to talk about it.
We had a lot of clients get really excited about VR a few years ago, and no one's talking about VR. And maybe we should be. I don't know. Maybe 5 years from now we will be. But I guess how are you all approaching the conversation around AI? Are you excited? Are you not excited? Are you a doubter like me?
I have feelings.
You have
Can
feelings?
I say it? So I am not a very tech savvy or early adopter type of person, but as a creative, lately AI has been making our jobs easier when it comes to things like storyboarding an idea. And, you know, my creative partner, the art director, is no longer like spending tons of time getting this one frame like just perfectly right, because he can like get ahead, shape it. We make very clear like this is not what it's going to look like, but we get it to a point where we feel like it can sell the idea. Right. Like when it comes to selling and expressing ideas that we have not executed yet, we've had a lot of luck with that, and we haven't. I'm kind of waiting for the moment when it's like becomes the McDonald's holiday commercial that maybe most of you have seen, where it's kind of like, that's awful. Like, we don't want that. But there's like
it's so bad.
It's so horrible. So like, I don't love that. But as a tool, and it's like, if you're one of those people that can master that tool and use it effectively, it's going to be great. But we don't need it to do the pretty creative stuff for us, right?
It's like, a tool, not a replacement.
Exactly. Yeah, that quote. People are all about that.
I had my first experience with AI with a client yesterday. I was for Outfronts at the billboard company. And our creative director, Carol, we always struggle with meeting with clients after the creative has been presented to them, because they always know more than we do. And, they wanted all this information on phone number, website, all this. We were able to run through our AI program, and AI had target maps on it. Like, this sucks, this sucks, this sucks. And so going back to the client, instead of I saying, you guys suck. You know?
Right.
The computer says that you guys suck.
Yeah.
And now it's like, okay, now it's validity.
Yeah.
And like, okay, now
Yeah.
we change the ad to what we wanted to say. And so it was an awesome client meeting.
Yeah,
I've
it's
never had somebody that, like, let me completely change their whole focus on it.
It's like it took the subjectivity
Yes.
out of it. Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting.
So I'm very excited right now about custom GPTs. I have built my own private brand strategy GPT with OpenAI's tools that I have poured all of my work into, kind of depersonalized from client names and whatnot, and use that to write creative briefs. I use it to structure documents. You know, the work is original, but the structure, right? Like if you think about writing a creative brief and how long it takes to write a good one. Just a couple weeks ago, I had a prospect and I recorded our call. He told me all the stuff that he wanted to do and his goals for this web app that he wanted to build. I don't like the meat geek kind of stuff, like the AI note takers, but I took a transcript of that recording, put it into my custom GPT and said, you know, build me a project brief for this. Presented it back to him, and I'm so embarrassed to say this, I may edit this out of the recording, but his feedback was, I don't feel like anyone's listened to me that closely ever. Like, obviously, let's go, right? And it wasn't, and you know, my job is to hand off projects from biz dev to the team, whatever team is going to do the work. So it's really important for me to document things and structure them in a way that our team understands and can take it and run with it. So that has made my life a million times easier, right? Like I can't afford to hire like a personal assistant to do that for me, but I have my little robot now that like, don't take it away.
Full transparency, I actually did use it to create and generate, like as a baseline to like kind of, I use the prompts to come up with this panel.
Shame. For shame.
No. I am AI.
And you didn't want to talk about it initially.
Well, and you can see the bad uses of it are the uncanny valley kind of pieces. Like you can tell when someone, I know 3 newsletters that I'm about to unsubscribe from because you can tell ChatGPT is writing it now. And that shit is lazy, right? Like in the Coke ad, like I'm certain that they released that just so we would talk about it, not because it's a good ad.
I hope so, because that would make it more compelling if they were like ballsy enough to do that. But like the beauty, the most emotional season of the year, they were like, let's let the robots do it. Yeah, it's awful.
Bring back the polar bears. No, I would say I am teetering in that like not super excited, but from a standpoint of in the digital media landscape, I think we have been used to hearing and using AI, and from an optimization perspective. And I think I loved like hearing about from that, for out front with the creative, because that technology has been, in Google Ads or in social platforms, something that how we learn over, for years at this point, ad strength and that kind of stuff. I think for us, it helps us, makes our lives easier and lets us focus more time on strategy and things rather than just more menial tasks and, data entry and analyzing things. So it's, can we garner all this data and then I can actually spend the time I should pulling meaningful and actionable insights out of it. So that's,
I love hearing these perspectives. And we can keep talking about this if you all want to. One question I kind of wanted to get to that's a little tangential is, if we had asked you 3 years ago, what will you be talking about at this panel 3 years down the road? What are you surprised we're not talking about? Does that question make sense? What is something a few years ago you would have thought would have been, a daily discussion in this room, and it's not? For me, it was, sorry, I'll let you all jump in, but for me, it was audio, like the connected audio stuff that was happening, the Clubhouse app that was so popular a few years ago, Twitter Spaces. I had a lot of friends who really thought this was going to be the future, and I just deleted the Clubhouse app off of my phone, even though it probably hasn't worked in like 2 years. What about you all? Is there something a few years ago you really would have thought was the future?
I was going to give a joke answer.
Okay.
That 3 years ago, I had a 3-year-old during a pandemic, so I thought like that was just going to be our life forever, and I had no concept of what could be,
I think we all really knew that blockchain and VR and that was just so bullshit. And it, no offense to it, sounds like you're a fan of VR, but no, it's not going to happen anytime soon.
That is a good point. Like my husband was always talking about blockchain, and I was like, I don't know what that
Blockchain.
is. Like I thought it was a restaurant or something. What is blockchain?
NFTs.
NFTs. That's
Kill me right now. But it is insightful to see a new tool that has come to replace that actually has utility, right? Like if somebody comes and it's going to be hard for the zeitgeist to put another NFT idea into our heads because now, of course, that's idiotic.
To be clear, I'm not a VR fan by any means. That was just what everyone was talking about.
But okay, now I'm going back. I actually did think, because I worked on a VR project around that time and tried it for the first time. And I was like, oh my God, it's going to transform mental health. But that hasn't helped. But, just completely immersive experiences and stuff I thought would be more transformative. That is a good point. I still think Beat Saber is a fantastic game that if you haven't tried, you should.
It is.
Great.
Is. What would you say?
But not advertising.
I was going to say, honestly, from 3-ish years ago, I don't have anything that I thought we would be talking about. I think the thing that I did not expect to explode, so I'm going to flip this on its head a little bit, was, you're talking about audio, different audio space of that we would have this explosion of like the podcast world and just, we had during the pandemic, it was like everyone was starting a podcast. And I think that we had some clients at the time that, that and then gaming. And we were able to, because of the kind of more niche audiences of a few different clients, got in on that pretty early, both with Twitch and then, podcasting. And I think that it's been interesting to see that those have just grown exponentially year over year. So
I think that after the pandemic, I'm jumping in here.
Go for it.
I think the pandemic reshaped a lot of how technology caught up with advertising tactics. And one specifically that I've seen a big shift in is the use of QR codes. So if you recall, QR codes, you had to download an app, and it was this big thing, and heck no, your mom wasn't using it. And, everybody's like, let me pull up the app, and, it was a big ordeal, and now technology caught up with the needs of people. And it's very unusual that I'm utilizing generic QR codes anymore, because we now have the ability to really speak one-to-one with that audience, and you can really personalize that communication, and it's instantaneous. And then it gives you the whole attribution storytelling at the end of it, which is wonderful, because you can see who's actually engaging with the QR code, whether it's in print or whether it's on the TV. The TV, it just blows my mind. Skip in here, I'm like, what are you talking about? I can do that, I mean, so I think that there's a lot of merging of technology and different ways and channels to reach our audience.
The QR code's an interesting one because it was a necessity for a little while. I'm curious 5 years from now how that's going to develop. We all know how to use it now. Interesting. Any questions for a moment? Yeah.
Have you seen the AI generated QR codes?
Yes.
Speaking of, those are pretty.
There you go. That's a good point. Yeah.
How would you have seen the usage of NFC chips back in the day? That's compared to now.
Say more.
I have no experience there except personal using my phone to, do things. We don't use it with, any of our technology or marketing stuff.
Good question, though. Thank you. Yes.
So, to that point, when we get into things like the availability of all of this attribution, I feel like a lot of times my clients get so in the weeds with it. Like, a click is not a proxy for sales, but when you go into what's the, we used to ask what's the goal of this campaign, and it's always brand awareness. It's never brand awareness. Let's be how are we going to measure that brand awareness in sales? So your goal is sales. Well, and so with so much available in reporting and how we're giving that data back to clients, how do you deal with that overload of information and make sure that you're telling the right story, or you're bringing back a story of success when there's so much visibility and transparency that it's painful?
I'll take this one. I think that has definitely been a journey, and I feel all of those pain points. But the biggest thing that I think we've found that's been successful is really segmenting out, okay, what's a business KPI? What are we trying to achieve? What's a campaign KPI? How do those connect? And what really matters? It's you're going to get data parallelization from all of this stuff. And you might think this is interesting, but does it matter to what we're trying to achieve? And really being if we're running something that, you say brand awareness, and it's okay, if you truly just want your message out in front of as many people as possible for this price, then we're going to look at impressions and CPM. But then you're going to come back and say, oh, but why is my click-through rate not high? Or why is this not converting? And it's okay, those are different KPIs that we need to talk about. That's what we're going to optimize towards, and that's going to affect our strategy. So I think that really being talking through it, and those conversations can be difficult. And it kind of sometimes requires a lot of education to people to, not make them feel like they're not understanding it or things like that. But I think that really trying to align on what are you ultimately trying to do, and then how does what you're going to be running in your advertising achieve that? What's its piece, and how does it work with other things?
I think I have two answers to your question here. The first one is a good CRM. I think, honestly, that is the tool that we all needed 20 years ago that we have now that can give us relevant data, right? So HubSpot will tell you what pages on a website somebody visited before they click the contact button or the purchase button. You can, tie your digital campaigns to HubSpot to know where these people are coming. The attribution is, it's never going to be perfect, but it's a lot better than it used to be. So from a reporting perspective, those types of analytics are more useful to someone that's not a data nerd, right? A lot of people want to use the data against you because they don't understand it, and you can really tell whatever story you want to from it. So that's kind of my, I'm addicted to HubSpot now. I think it's a fantastic tool, and I used to hate it. So I'm a convert. The next piece is how that is reported. I threw a fit a while ago. I'm being hyperbolic, but the way that we report to clients, we've changed to just start with recommendations. Here's a ton of data on what we've done with these campaigns and this content and all of your channels. Maybe that, like, we'll dig into that if you don't agree with these recommendations. Like a one-page synopsis with like, okay, it's our quarterly reporting time. We think you should do this, 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 and this. Why? Okay. The next page, here's a little bit of data, a little bit of attribution. If you really want to dig, like if you don't agree with what our strategists are reporting there, then we can dig into the data. So we've tried to turn that story around and like, if we have consensus on like our next quarter's priorities or our next year's priorities, then we don't need to dig into this data. Like trust the strategy team.
I love it. Love it. Any questions? Any other questions? Any hurdles you guys are dealing with? Anything interesting you've encountered recently?
I have a question, more on the digital side. I have a thought that Google Ads is dying, and not that it's dying, but more that it's just being consumed by big brands, and we're a small business, so we can't compete on ad spend with that. What alternatives are you seeing for a small business that have been successful in that space?
I completely agree with your thoughts. I have a lot of feelings about Google Ads. I think that, and I'm sure you probably hear this as well, especially if you're in contact with them, of like, well, you just need to spend more. And I think that slightly in the same vein, but I still think that it is still beneficial for smaller brands, smaller budgets, are, Meta. Yeah. 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 I think that they're, again, kind of in that same vein, they're in the same sandbox, right? But I do think that Google has rested on their laurels for many years of that they're Google and they can do whatever they want. Meta's kind of the same. I think depending on who your audience is, it just may pay off more to be in that space. But I do think that we have a lot of digital partners that are not Google that over the years have learned that it is, I think the space that used to be what kept you away from being able to work with them was high minimums, and especially as a smaller business, and a lot of that has changed, especially I'd say in the last 2 to 3 years. And I think that, even we have shifted spend very much away from Google. It's like we do what we need to do for SEM, but beyond that, yes. And so I think it's finding, these partners that then they also are going to be able to help you across more channels than just Google Ads can. And it really has been kind of eliminating those minimums that's helped smaller businesses. Yeah.
I have to look at that. Yeah, and then some brand.
Well, now they're changing, right, how they want you to do like your keyword targeting again, and it's just, yeah.
Nobody's talked about this yet, and it blows my mind, but one of the big things with AI is it's changed. So I remember when Google started showing, like, on the search results page, the information, so people weren't clicking. Now, they have an AI recap, and like, I'm never going to spend money on a Google ad if they're just going to get a little recap of my article, and nobody's talking about this yet. I think it's going to be a huge deal.
So that is a thing. It's so SEO used to be like the acronym, now GEO, like generative engine optimization, and I know nothing about it other than that it exists and that we should all be paying attention to it. Yeah, but that is a thing. That GEO is kind of like the next thing in search, so might be worth being on the front of that.
I think we're in a flux moment right now with the industry because they need our ad dollars, and thus they need our ad dollars to work. So these like no-click results for Google where you just get the answer, they have to fix that. So, but it's not worth it now. I would ask like what's your offering that you're moving Google Ads from, and like what's
Amazon mostly.
so you're trying to sell things on Amazon? Okay.
But that's the D2C side, and most of our Google stuff is more directed towards a B2B audience, but the B2B audience will purchase on our Shopify website. So we're selling to like a brewer that is going to buy, that works at a brewery and is going to do a barrel-aged beer, and they're going to buy some barrels from us online. So that's been very successful on Meta. We've really dialed that audience on Meta. And Google, like literally branded campaigns are the only thing that have been like shown consistent return on ad spend over the course of this whole year.
This would turn into an hour-long conversation. I will say, like we've got a small client, family-run business here, working on a case study right now, and we just focused their spend on Spotify ads and YouTube pre-roll, and they've done so much business since then. They've hired 2 new people, and it's a small case study because it's a small client, but like it was absolutely not worth it to even think about Google Ads there.
I'm considering pulling all my spend for next year and just dumping it into podcasts and stuff.
Yeah?
To be honest with you, so.
That's tough.
How has, you mentioned Twitch briefly earlier, but like how has the emergence of like short form video content and TikTok changed how you approach that aspect of advertising?
Great question. So tremendously. I think that the biggest thing, TikTok is one of my favorite platforms to talk about, especially when we are making a recommendation, and especially the last few years of first the content and the type of content, and that goes across really anything. I think Candace mentioned it, just even with the awards, that the American Advertising Awards, that a lot of the entries involve video. That is because video performs, and if you have the right content, especially. And so I think that TikTok has very much propelled that we need to have those shorter videos, but then now it's kind of seeing a swing back. People like this longer, almost like the old school YouTube style. But I think also with TikTok and then even other social platforms, it's the knowing your audience and that there are people who are all ages that are consuming it. And then what we always talk about is, okay, you have this wide breadth and making sure that whatever content you are, having different ad sets targeted to them, and your content is targeted to them. And I think, Sam would probably agree with that, of really thinking through how do you use that and, make it applicable for that platform. We'll create content that is for a campaign that runs across TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, but they all look different. So that's definitely been a big change. And I think when working with our creative teams, of kind of explaining that, of why we can't just take one video and version it out by specs of the platform.
Cut downs are not really
They're like, let me just put this in a
ideal.
16:9. I'm like, no.
Yeah. So, and just from the creative point of view, and I won't go too long because I don't know if your question was really tailored to this, but that, watch times are getting shorter and shorter, and then maybe not. But that presents such a fun creative challenge, because especially if we're like looking for emotion or even conveying information, like we all live our lives in bite-sized moments anyway. So like really that's just tapping into and harnessing something that's already there. But a interesting example of something I worked on recently was for a healthcare client, where they, like healthcare is, TikTok's not like the first place you think of when you think of like, it's out of this region, but it would be like an equivalent of like a Baptist Health here in Louisville, just size-wise and sort of like positioning-wise. But we did this big campaign, and it had like the big 30-second, and we had multiple 30-second film and all of this other, like out of home. It was like truly an integrated campaign. And then their social media team was like, oh, we have TikTok. And we were like, cool. We should not put this on TikTok. Like, do not put your 30-second ad on TikTok. But what we did was during the shoot, and we had to have this as part of the plan before production even started, we created, I think I made this up, character generated content. So it was the point of view of a different character in the TV spot. And we literally shot it on an iPhone. So like we gave the phone to an extra in the shoot and let them shoot the scene, not like behind the scenes, but like there's a spot of a guy running a marathon. And we handed the phone to an extra in the shoot and heard her being like, come on, let's go, buddy. And so like it provided this completely TikTok appropriate lens on the campaign. Now, to go back to like your world, I don't know how that performed, but it sure was a good idea. So
I love that. I think that is the thing that's so hard, and that to I think convince people, it's gotten a little bit easier, but that especially on a more social platform, people if it looks too polished and like an ad, swipe, done. I don't care how short it is.
Unless it's like so beautiful and
Yes.
like aspirational.
Coca-Cola
that
AI
it's-
generated.
Yeah, like that. Lifestyle kind of stuff.
Going up a level from that question, I have been a little bit obsessed with just the concept of platform mastery, if you will, like surrounding yourself or knowing people that are really into Reddit and know how to do a deep dive and find the people that will be interested in your thing, whatever it is, or TikTok, like this. Like no one person at this point can be a platform master of all of this ecosystem. And there are some people that are just really good at understanding what the algorithms can do. I'm not that person, but I respect the hell out of somebody that could let's go find a Reddit person and help out this client, because that's how they're going to supercharge their thing, right? Another bit is really small clips of people talking sincerely. I despise, I'm sure anybody that's on LinkedIn anymore is just sick of the podcast thing where people are trying to look really thoughtful and wise on their video screen, with a 2-minute video. But every now and then you can get a quip from somebody that's like, this is solid gold. For example, so I interviewed one of our clients, Bernheim Forest. We did a rebrand for them, and I went out and interviewed them. And the director he made this analogy of rebranding and the detail to a wine tasting, and it was 20 seconds of I get it now. The colors and the fonts. It's like going to a wine tasting and talking about the terroir and everything. And I'm like, I got it. So you got to look out for those opportunities, right? And, find somebody that's not afraid to keep a camera rolling, because that authentic, spur of the moment kind of thing can turn into solid gold. I know we got a few client prospects specifically from that video.
Very cool. Very cool. Thank you for that question. That's awesome.
I have one quick thing to add to
Yeah,
that.
go for it.
Is I kind of like the B-roll. We do a lot of similar of that if we're doing shoots. But I think something, if you have where we have our dental practices, and it's and if anything where you have your team members that are not in the marketing department, or they're not part of the ad agency, is to give them the opportunity to be the people who generate your content. That's who people are going to interact with. They're who know it. They're who's going to sell it the best. And I think that, especially for these kind of platforms, and then there's a lot of even, newer technologies where you can, if you're a small business, where you have these, social videos that you can then take them and play them in a CTV inventory. So kind of exploring those different avenues of stuff that you have at your fingertips that you might not have thought about.
I like it.
I also have one thing on that. I don't think the magic of TikTok is the short form video content. It's the fact that it's an interest-based social platform as opposed to a follower-based social platform. And actually, I think this week, YouTube made shorts 3 minutes now. Twitch is going through an apocalypse. So I think that TikTok will eventually extend their videos, because the people that are interested in longer videos will get engagement. The reason that they have them as short is because you get engagement for the whole clip.
Yeah. They've extended theirs. Yeah. Some can do 10. But
I love it. Well, we're gonna wrap up here. Yeah. Yeah, we're at 6:30.
But,
Okay.
okay, as can get into the new blue sky. So as far as that question of any trend watching, anything you see that might become the thing, the next, I mean, TikTok had the boon of just getting electronics. What could be the new?
I'm going to answer first because I'm sure it'll be the least interesting and the most wrong. I have come to VR. I'm not going to live that down. I'm not going to be the only one that has an Oculus gathering dust somewhere. I kind of like Threads. I know it's gotten a lot of crap, but it operates very differently than Twitter. It's very easy to find people who have similar interests to you. It's not so much a timeline as much as it is kind of a blog, I guess, in a way that if you think about it. I kind of enjoyed using it. I don't know what the future holds from an ad perspective, but I think they're slowly curating a passionate audience. We'll see. I don't think it's going to replace Twitter. I think it'll be a whole different thing at some point. I will probably be very wrong, but I'll throw it to Jason next.
It's embrace fragmentation to me. There's going to be a lot of things. I mean, the real question for 5 years from now is, what does AI kill? I mean, it could be this whole industry. I don't think it will be, but it could be. So, but I don't think we're going to see any kind of unified, the platforms will rise and fall as they have over the last 15 years, but I don't know. For me, it's embrace fragmentation, find people that understand algorithms and know how to dig in and help you generate content that rises up in the algorithms, but it's going to be different for every platform.
I don't know. And also, I know, just again, focus group of one, so many people are feeling the need to unplug or disassociate or just head in the sand for a while. And so I guess the trend I would watch for is like, well, then what happens in that context? How long does it last and what comes up next? Maybe it's Threads. I don't know. Or VR.
I totally agree. I think in that, like, two parts with what Sam said, it's taking that and thinking, okay, what are the things that if people are unplugged, how are they still, like, how do you kind of circumvent that? That's like, I always feel like the creepy, not great side of things. So it's like, how do I still give you an ad? But then also, I think that, and this is not necessarily new, but it's just something that we have done more and more of and will continue to do more, is leveraging your first party data. Like, however you can do that, talking about a CRM, that has been one of the biggest successes that we've had in our business, is implementing that across the board, from just our internal uses, but even more so from, connecting continuously with our patients, and then taking that information and using it to find people like them, and then just giving people things to, again, meet them where they're at. What do they care about? Are we giving you a message that is appealing to a family because you are a parent with 2 children, and you may come to a couple different of our locations based on that. And then also just really, I think my biggest advice, especially if you're in that world, is also learning about like regulations and things like that, of how to use it properly. Because I think that it is just going to become more and more important, especially as we talk about cookies and, things like that. I know everybody's sick of hearing it, but first party data is powerful.
I just thought of something I would add to this, and something that I would hope happens, is the micro-targeting ability. Like, I've got a friend that works in ad tech, and like the profiles that these like ad companies you've never heard of know so much about you, it's creepy. So once they're able to hook those into some type of AI algorithm to say, give me, males aged 24 to 26 in Nashville that have listened to the new Cure album, like, go send them an ad. Like, that is almost possible now, but I think in the next few years you'll be able to do micro targeting to really see how those perform, and it's exciting and creepy. I don't know if I like it. I don't know.
It perpetuates the bubble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I disagree. I think there's going to be regulation that's
In America?
like we're getting more into international law. I'm dealing with GDPR for the first time. It's obviously it's not fun.
Right.
But I feel better for those consumers. I'm being honest, is you're talking about being unplugged. I think the reason that people want to be unplugged is because every time they log into something, it's like add, and then here's the one thing I was trying to find. And they're so competitive that I think that that's where it's moving right now, but I think that there will be disruption in the space in the next 5 years or so that makes it more challenging to do that.
I think some people may doubt you, but I think you're right, because I think if a couple of states put in place legislation, it'll
California.
but there are plenty of other states that are considering similar legislation. Yeah.
I think once people start getting a lot of ads that are irrelevant to them and are nothing they would ever buy, you know, I mean, if they start serving me, you know, bows and arrows instead of eyelashes, like I'm going to tune out a lot quicker. I'm okay with sharing some sort of, I mean, of course, I realize anybody who wants my data already has it probably, but like, I think if it starts to get too regulated and too impersonal, it can't survive that way. And then all of the things that we enjoy because they're ad supported are going away. I mean, so we can't have, you know, I mean, we've seen it with multiple platforms, like, you know, Amazon Prime is now, you can pay $2.99 a month and not have ads, or you can say, oh my God, I already subscribe to 12 different platforms, like, I can't possibly, like, $3 is the straw that breaks the camel's back. So I think, you know, in order to enjoy the things that we do for free, I think we're going to want to keep that ad-supported environment, and then also we're going to want that ad-supported environment to be relevant to us, just like it.
So do you think it'll be opt-in? Like, would that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it may just be more in your face of like, you know, it is, are you sure that, you know?
Gone through enshipfication
Mm-hmm.
in the last
Yep.
3 years, I would say,
Yeah.
because all the investors are now wanting their money back from these giant tech companies, and so now, oh, you paid $10 a month, but now you can either pay $15 a month or pay $10 a month and get an ad every time. It's like, no. So, anyway.
I hope you're right. I like that. Any other questions to wrap us up? Anything, some bearing on your soul this whole time? If not, thank you all so much. Give a hand for our panel. Thank you, Elizabeth, Sam, Jason.